Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week I'm discussing Codename, Kids Next Door, created by Mr. Warburton. I remember when the pilot for this show aired on Cartoon Network back in July of 2001, almost 20 years ago now, so crazy. And that was the year when fans could call in and vote on which pilot they wanted to be seen made into a show. And they aired, I want to say 5 or 6. They aired one each week during the summer on Cartoon Fridays. And I remember when this one aired, just everything about it immediately clicked. Already you had a sense of who the characters were with their distinct personalities. The art style stood out. The humor was great. The actual universe of the show, the premise of the show, everything about it worked. And I knew with my kid intuition, I knew that this was the show that was going to win. There was no doubt in my mind. And I remember calling in and voting, and then it was announced weeks later that this show had won, and again, it was no surprise to me. I was just so excited. And what's crazy, though, is that apparently the creator himself, Mr. Warburton, didn't find out the show had gotten picked up until that moment when it was announced on Cartoon Network. So he found out when everyone else found out. What's also cool is that the characters themselves, the kids next door, originated in another pilot he had made that didn't go to series called Kenny and the Chimp. And they're not actually in the pilot itself, but the idea was that they were going to be antagonists on that show, where there were the kids next door, literally the kids next door, the neighbors next door, and they would just show up to cause mischief. So it's just cool how he instead took them and made them the focus. And just this really awesome, amazing premise of kids being part of this secret global organization to protect fellow kids from adult tyranny. And what a fun idea for a show, and just everything about it is so well done. And I actually hadn't seen most of these episodes, surprisingly. I really only remembered episodes from the first couple of seasons and then a handful from the later seasons, but I really had only seen about a third of this show. It's just wild to me. But so watching a lot of episodes now as an adult, I honestly really appreciate it watching it now with the world building in this show, the lore of the kids next door, the organization itself. It's really creative. It's just really so fun. And watching the pilot in particular, having not seen it in years and years, it really is such a great pilot. And there are certain things about it that immediately jumped out at me in terms of things I remembered about it that stuck with me as a kid. So just watching it again and having not seen it in so long, just certain things about it that made me smile. Just certain lines of dialogue in particular, I like certain random things, I don't know why, like when number 5 says, "Number 5 ordered nachos," or when number 3 brings them all snacks, and then number 1 says, "Hey, what did you bring me?" And she says, "Nothing." Like, that just made me laugh, because I just remembered it so distinctly as a kid. And even certain images, in particular when numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5 are staring up when they're at the treehouse still, and they're all staring up when number 1 is speaking to all of them and explaining about Adult Swim. And what's so funny is that with Adult Swim, that was the same year when the Adult Swim programming block on Cartoon Network premiered. So what a funny coincidence, because I remember commercials for that, and they would say, "No kids in the pool," or "All kids out of the pool," something like that, like Adult Swim is coming. And then I remember thinking, oh wait, is that the show? And it's like, oh no, it's not the show, Kids Next Door, because then Kids Next Door, the show, premiered the following year in 2002. So just such a great pilot. And of course, the whole point of a pilot, to sell the series and give you a sense of the characters and the kind of stories you're going to tell in your show. Even just introducing each of the characters with number 5 in their rooms, like how number 5 is reading and then the light flashes 5, and then number 4 in his, it's just cool even with their rooms, that ginormous treehouse, which is so amazing too, with number 5 with like her lounge room, super cool, and then number 4 in his wrestling ring room, and then number 3 in her room with all of her rainbow monkeys, and then number 2, even with his appearance too, with his aviation goggles, being really into aviation, and since he's the pilot and on all of their ships and everything, and that he sleeps in a plane, like a cockpit of a plane for his bed. And then number 1 with his room, how him being the leader, so he's got all the controls and everything. So let's break down the 5 main characters. We got number 1, whose real name is Nigel Uno, and he's voiced by Ben Diskin. And apparently he was originally voiced by an actual little kid, but then the kid had gone through puberty, so then they had to recast him. So that's just a random fun fact for you. And it's just funny that he's a bald 10-year-old, because why not? And him being the leader of Sector V, that he really is just so loyal to the kids next door, and that is his mission in life, to protect all kids from the tyranny of teenagers and adults. And he's British too, just a random distinction. They really are so diverse too, which is awesome. And then we got number 2, whose real name is Hoagie P. Gilligan Jr., also voiced by Ben Diskin. And he's actually a really sweet kid too. And it just was so funny, because the thing I most remembered about him was that he always made those hilariously awful puns, and only he found them funny. So that's just funny too, though. He thinks he's so funny, but no one finds him funny at all. But he's also really intelligent too. And even though he's number 2, he's not the second in command, but he makes all the 2x4 technology, and he's the pilot for all of their stuff. And with, of course, all their technology too is just so creative and clever, with all the great acronyms that we see throughout the show. Then, of course, with the acronyms of the actual episode titles themselves. And then we got number 3, whose real name is Kuki Sanban. And it's just great how all of their names are puns or related to their numbers, of course, coincidentally. So with Kuki Sanban, because Sanban is number 3 in Japanese, and since she's Japanese too. And she's voiced by Lauren Tom, aka Julie from Friends. And it's just great how she's always so super cheerful, and she's obsessed with rainbow monkeys, but then she does have a temper on her too. And she does come off as she is an airhead, that's fair to say, but she always knows what's going on, though. She's smarter than I think most people give her credit for. But then you look at my favorite character, number 4, whose real name is Wallaby Beetles, and I love that he's Australian, and he's voiced by D. Bradley Baker, and it's fair to say, he's delightfully dumb. He's definitely the dumbest in the group, but he makes up for it in just his tenacity, and always willing to fight, and just his readiness to always spring into action. And he was always my favorite, because first of all, I think he's the funniest. I would think that if they did a poll, I wonder if they ever did Cartoon Network, but if they had done a poll, I think number 4 is most people's favorite operative of Sector V, because he's just so funny, and he's relatable, I'm sure, to boys, but then he's just adorable too. It's adorable that he has a huge crush on number 3. I always loved those two, all the little moments they had throughout the show. It's just always really cute. And, he just tries really hard, but he's just, a little dumb, but it's okay. And then we got, of course, number 5, my second favorite character, hands down. And her real name is Abigail Lincoln, and she's voiced by Cree Summer. And she's just so badass and cool and genuinely smart and level-headed that she really is the one who's actually keeping them all in line, even number 1. And honestly, I really love her dynamic with number 1 in particular, with just that mutual respect they have for each other, and just that they both are really looking out for each other, obviously for the whole team, but just there's this kinship there with them. Not even romantic at all too, which I like, because they just need more of that, I think, in general, of just male and female friendships, platonic relationships. So it just works really well, that dynamic between the two of them. I do also really like the dynamic between number 5 and number 4, because that's kind of like a brother-sister relationship, with Abby being the older sister, in a sense, to number 4, and again, looking out for him and stuff. So I just think that's really cute too, that I didn't really notice as a kid, because a lot of these later episodes, when they do stuff like that, when they get deeper into the show and you just see more of the dynamics and more again of the lore of Kids Next Door and the world building, it's all exceptionally well done. And what's also cool too is even in these early episodes, when we're getting smaller storylines in the sense of just these episodic villains, but then of course they come back more and more throughout the show, but then it is always building towards a bigger story, with of course the main antagonist of the show being Father, voiced by Maurice LaMarche. And my God, he's just like so evil, like such a sinister voice. And the fact that he's just this dark silhouette with the pipe. And it is funny though how that's just really a costume, like a suit that he's wearing. That's just interesting. And then his real name is Benedict Wigglestein. Oh my goodness. And then of course his children, the delightful children from down the lane. Those kids were always so creepy. The fact that they speak in unison, that they move as a unit, and even like sometimes they would just say I instead of we. They're so creepy. And it made me wonder, like, were they brainwashed this whole time? Which then we learn about more with their backstory in Operation Zero, which is such a phenomenal movie. I hadn't seen the full movie, so watching it now for the first time, really, it's so well done. But God, they're creepy. The delightful children from down the lane. Oh my gosh. But so many just great, sillier villains too. Of course, the Toilinator. There's always that one like really joke of a villain. It's just so funny how like no one takes him seriously. And Sticky Beard is great, and he's voiced by Mark Hamill, so that's so cool too. And Night Brace and Grandma Stuffin. So many great villains just that we're introduced to even in just this first season. And another great character, I would say that it's a character that either you love or hate, it seems like. I think most people dislike her, but I never really minded her. Although I'll admit I did find her obnoxious and stuff as a kid, but more, I feel for her more so now, is Lizzie, Nigel's girlfriend. Lizzie voiced by Grey Delisle Griffin. And it always was so funny to me whenever she'd say, oh, Nige. Like, oh my gosh. With the boyfriend helmet when she's introduced in season 1. But the whole thing with her, though, is that, like, she wants him all to herself, but then he's just devoted to the kids next door. That's his number one thing in life, the kids next door, so she could never really surpass that. But she is super obnoxious and controlling, though. I mean, that's fair to say, too. But I just always I feel bad for Lizzie, though, now, watching it now, because she was never really number one in Nigel's heart, honestly. But, like, in that episode when they are going to that party, and then it's just, like, being thrown by the delightful children, and then he's like, oh, this isn't a date, and she just, like, keeps, like, wants to take pictures, and, like, acts like it's, like, an Operation Date. And so then they all feel bad for her. Then at the end, it's like, okay, show's over, like, poor Lizzie. And then at the end, it's like, oh, Lizzie. And then he takes her hand at the end, which is cute. But you know what's funny is that watching this now, I never made this connection as a kid, but they're dynamic to me now. And maybe it's just purely a coincidence because currently Mr. Warburton is an executive producer on Muppet Babies, a new version of Muppet Babies on Disney Junior. But to me, their dynamic a little bit reminds me of Kermit and Miss Piggy, in particular with the same kind of dynamic where basically Nigel and with Kermit, how they're just kind of scared of Lizzie and Miss Piggy, respectively, and it's just kind of like a reluctant thing. So that's kind of just what I saw from it on this recent viewing of watching a bunch of these episodes. So who knows, but just an interesting coincidence. And, of course, a recurring thing in this show is Caked, like Operation Caked, and they had 5 episodes of those where they try to get to the... And also was featured in the finale, too, where they try to get to the delightful children from down the lane's birthday cake. That was always a fun thing, like fun reoccurring thing. And I liked how, though, in particular with season 1, how it was building up to something bigger, where in that episode with that cigar from like that Boss Baby character and then that agifying thing, so then when they throw it out of the treehouse and then of course the delightful children find it, like it's at the end of a different episode and they're laughing, and then it comes back into play in the final episode of season 1, Operation Grow Up, when Nigel becomes becomes an adult and then like he has to become a kid again. And then we learn more about the kids next door itself, how when you're 13 you have to be decommissioned, you can't be a kid forever. So, and it's just great how, to me, all of that stuff comes up organically. It never feels like it's just being sprung on you. It feels like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So then we learn about it when it's time to learn about it. Like, again, it's just really well done in terms of the broader thing about kids next door itself, with the decommissioning and with the moon base, that kind of stuff. I'm just a fan of it, just from a story standpoint. I really think it's great. And Another episode that I always loved, that I loved as a kid, in particular from season 1, is Operation Office, because that's a number 4 centric episode, and number 3 is in that one too. And it's just so funny because like he goes to take your daughter to work today. He's like, "But Dad, I'm a boy," and the dad's just so oblivious because all parents are oblivious. It's funny too, and then when he's with all the girls, and like to go to Rainbow Monkey party. That Rainbow Monkey theme song, my goodness, oh my god. But it's just so funny, that episode, because in particular, like when he sees them all, and then he's like, "They're freaks!" Like, made me laugh. Oh my god, so funny. And when he just sees number 3, it's like, okay, we gotta get out of here. It's like, alright, we'll save the dumb girls. Like, and then he's like, okay, whoever doesn't want to die, get in the vents, and then no one's paying attention. Then he's like, okay, there's a bunch of Rainbow Monkey video games. And then the one girl's like, I don't know, I'm kind of scared. And he just pushes her, like, yeah, come on. So, it's just funny, oh my goodness. I always loved just the number 4 and number 3 moments in this show, because, like, even with numbers 2 and 5, when they would tease him about it, because, like, obviously they knew that he had a crush on her, and it wasn't anything mean-spirited, but it just came from a place of teasing him, like what you do with your siblings or with your friends. Like, you just tease them just to kind of get a rise out of them, because, like, they just get, especially with boys when they like girls, because it's like, they're kids, it's embarrassing. So it's just cute, though, poor number 4. And it just works, too, that they're so opposite, the two of them. Him being like the rough and tumble boy and her being a super girly girl. So of course he'd have a crush on her. It just makes sense. It's just adorable. And they're both, they're not exactly the smartest. The two of them come in the group out of the 5 of them, because really number 5 is the smartest. So it just works. And then also when we learn about number 274, Chad, and how he's like the greatest Kids Next Door operative, but then when he becomes a teenager, then he has to be decommissioned. And that's a great one too, in Operation End in season 2, when he kind of backstabs them because now he's a teenager. And also when we're introduced to, speaking of teenagers, we're introduced to number 5's older sister, Cree. What a coincidence, Cree, voiced by Cree Summer. No, that's intentional, of course. But that's an episode where, if you hadn't seen the show in so long, but you watched it as a kid, that's an episode where you just remember it. Oh yeah, Operation Support, battle ready armor. That's so hysterical with number 1 and number 2. But what's weird, though, with number 2, because he had a crush on Cree, and then there's that episode when he becomes a teenager, and then, that one's funny too, the Operation Kiss. Because then he ends up with Abby, though, which we find out in the series finale, Operation Interviews. And I remember watching the finale at the time when it aired. At that point, I was a teenager. Ugh. And I remember thinking, it seems kind of random. But in hindsight now, it doesn't to me, because they do have little moments here and there, number 2 and number 5. In particular, actually, number 5, a couple times getting jealous when number 2, showed interest in someone else. So that's interesting anyway. And they just work, too, because they're so different. But, they just work, so they're cute together, too. Her being so cool and him being, kind of a dork, but, that just works. And even, again, with his puns, when, with Grandma Stuffums and him saying, I'm sending this dish back to the kitchen. And then number 5 saying, back to the, come on, man. Come on. Hoagie. So funny. And, again, just all of the villains. Count Spankulot is hilarious too. He's voiced by Darren Norris, aka Cosmo, Timmy's dad, Jorgen von Strangle for Fairly Odd Parents, and so many other shows, obviously. And D. Bradley Baker too, he's because he voiced number 4, but he also voiced Heinrich and so many characters on this show, obviously. And also he's just known for doing all creature voices and animal sounds and everything like that. And I love him as, in particular, Klaus from American Dad. So it's funny in this show with that kid Heinrich, because he's got the German accent and just sounds like a higher pitched Klaus. So it's just funny to me. Oh my gosh, so much great stuff. I also always loved the episode Operation Cats, with that cat woman, crazy cat lady, with all her cats. Animals on this show are so absolutely adorable. There's the episode with the chicks in Caked 3, and there's the skunk Bradley, who becomes the honorary number 6. So that's so cute. So animals are just so cute on the show, but all the cats. But I remember as a kid, I loved this one because, again, it's number 4, number 3 cute moments where he ripped her stuffed animals, and he dressed up as the stuffed animal, reluctantly. And then, like, she gives him a hug, so you have to say it. And, like, he has to say, I love you, like what the doll would say, I love you. And then he just, like, keeps refusing. And at the end, he's, like, finally says it. And she's like, oh, say it again. And he's like, oh, don't press your luck. I remember as a kid watching that, being like, oh, that's so adorable, because he actually does love her. Because it's just funny, because, of course, he didn't want to say because it's, like, embarrassing because it actually means something to him. This is all the kind of stuff I pick up on now as an adult. I just find it cute. And also, since I'm on the subject of them, it's actually, like, obvious that number 3 always knew that Wally had a crush on her, and she just, because, like, there were moments where he'd want to tell her, he'd be like, Kooky, I have to tell you something, and then she'd be like, oh, I know, Wally, you love rainbow monkeys, too. It's so cute. Oh gosh, like, so she already knew, though, which is cute, too. I also loved Operation Beach, too, and then the King Sandy kid kidnaps number 3 to, like, become his bride, and then number 4's like, oh, they made it personal by taking number 3, and then, like, they're teasing him, numbers 2 and 5. He's like, oh, it's not like that, she owes me a quarter, and at the end, when he's like, oh, give me back that quarter you owe me, she's like, what are you talking about, I don't owe you a quarter, you know. And it's funny, too, like, when he saves her, then they just go running past, and numbers 2 and 5 are like, hello, you forgot something. They have to go back and save them. Oh, goodness. And another one, a great one that I hadn't actually seen before, was Operation Undercover, because it's just, like, some of the best episodes, too, are just ones that focus on all of them as a team, obviously. But that one's great because it just shows how the kids next door always outsmart people. Like, when they think they are being double-crossed, but then it turns out they just flip it on them, because that's one where we see Lenny, who's separated from the other delightful children. Lenny, the one with the helmet on his head. Apparently one of the other kids is named Bruce, the blonde kid, and then I think one is named Constance. I don't know about the other 2 kids, but God, those kids, the way they just talked in unison. And I remember the episode when they were, like, caught in the zoo by that woman, and, like, they have to work together. It's like they're just on display at the zoo, and it's like, okay, here's the nerd exhibit, here's the bully exhibit, like, all the kids at the zoo. Oh my goodness. But anyway, in Operation Undercover, with Lenny thinking, like, he's betraying them, but really, it was part of their plan, the delightful children, but really the kids next door knew that, so it's just really great how they just always outsmart them. Even also with Cree, how she thinks she's outsmarting Abby, but then Abby always turns it around on them. It's like, oh yeah, she got what she thinks she wanted, you know, because Cree working with Father, and, like, you know, her being a teenager wanting to get rid of the kids next door, but then she herself was a kids next door operative at one point. And then I did also, like, Operation Butt. I always remembered that one, too, with them making fun of Nigel's butt, the picture. And then it's just funny how that at the end, then they show the picture, though. But then he was going to leave the kids next door because they blackmailed him. And then when number 3's like, oh, bye, number 1. Like, oh, you think he's going to give me a present? And then number 4's like, no, he's gone. Don't you understand? J-A-W-N, gone. Spelling's not really a strong suit. I do also really like the episode where it's all silent, when there's no dialogue. But then you actually see them talking, though. Like, usually when their episodes are dialogue-free, there's no talking at all. But in this one, like, you see them talking, you just don't know what they're saying. And you just get a sense of it, though, based on what's going on with the fly. And then it turns out that fly they were using as a recording device, the delightful children. Another great one that I really liked I hadn't seen was Operation Sprout and Operation Hound. When, in the first one, when number 4 eats a Brussels sprout. And it's funny how, like, certain things associated with being a kid. All kids hate vegetables, so especially, you know, broccoli, spinach, Brussels sprouts. As a kid, I'll say I liked broccoli and spinach, never cared for Brussels sprouts, though. But then when he eats a Brussels sprout, then they have to go in to get rid of the Brussels sprout. Anything like that, when, you know, you gotta go inside someone's body, that's always fun. Like, there's plenty of stuff like that in kids' shows. And it's numbers 1, 2, and 5, the smart ones in the group, with number 3 staying behind to, like, comfort Wally. It's so cute how they call each other Wally and Kooky, too. It's just cute that they use their actual names for each other. And then Operation Hound, where that girl, Veronica, or Valerie, I'm blanking now, when she turned into a were-puppy, a were-dog, and eats her homework. And that just reminds me of a story that happened when I was, I think, in 7th grade, in the grade below me, when I remember our teacher showing us a letter that this kid's mom had given to him, saying that, like, it was an actual letter she had written, saying, I know this seems like a joke, but this really happens. the dog ate my son's homework, and he like showed it to us to prove, and he's like, wow, I never saw this before. So that happened in real life. That just reminds me of that. But what I love about this show is how just taking all of these ideas related to being a kid and just creating a different spin on it, obviously. Like a great one that stood out to me too that I had never seen was Operation Closet, where it's like, okay, kids hate cleaning their closets, so stuffing everything in their closet, and then in the closet it's as if it's this avalanche of clothes, so it's as if it's snow, but instead it's clothes, and then you have the abominable sweater, so instead of the abominable snowman thing, and it's like, oh, I never wanna wear you, and then when he finally wears it, it's like, okay, I'll wear you. So it's just really clever taking stuff like that and putting an interesting spin on it that just makes it fun to watch as a kid and as an adult. And there's just great stuff with each of them, to like number 5 on her quest to find the 4th flavor with the ice cream, and with her personal nemesis with Heinrich, who she calls Heine, so funny. And number 2 with his aviation, where he meets that one kid who's also like a pilot like him. And number 3 always with her rainbow monkeys. And it's funny how when they have downtime, they just start playing video games, all of them. But number 1, he just hates downtime. He just always wants to be on missions. And another great one I really loved that I hadn't seen was Operation Pool, which was a half-hour episode, and it was just great because we see the negative versions of numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and with Lizzie too, just seeing like their opposites. So number 5, the opposite, she's like super uncool, and number 2, he's actually genuinely funny, and then number 4, he's evil, but he's also a coward, and number 3, instead, she's just super bratty instead of being super cheerful and nice, like being just really rude. And number 1, 2, being a coward instead of being the leader, of course. That was just really great. Even in Operation End, it's cool because like when they get decommissioned, the team, they get wrongfully decommissioned from number 274, because that's when he was turning 13, and then when they are not themselves, but then number 1 is just trying to quickly tell them all what to do, and then like they're just helping out just for the sake of it, and then you just see number 3 and number 4 like naturally just like flirting with each other, which is cute. Like it's like, oh, number 4, good luck. And it's like cute. And then number 1 saying, oh well, like, yeah, you're like with saying the number, it's like, oh yeah, you're smart, that's why you're not the one strapped to this thing to launch into space, because number 4 is. And like always just so many moments when number 4 just saves number 3, but then she turns around and saves him too. That happens several times too, in that episode in particular. And then when number 362 becomes the leader, and she's voiced by Rachel McFarlane, who's, you know, Haley on American Dad and so many other shows too. She's a bunch of stuff. But apparently a lot of people shipped number 1 with number 362. To me, I kind of just see it more as just, again, like a platonic mutual respect type relationship, because she says how like he could be the leader, and then when she's so burnt out by being the leader, when in another episode I hadn't seen, Operation I.N.T.E.R.V.I.E.W.S, when they do a giant game of tag to pick a new leader of Kids Next Door, and then number 2 accidentally tags Father is like, oh my gosh, the voice is just perfect for that character. And then we do see Father out of his silhouette when it's first in Operation Archive, when number 1's giving an oral book report on the creation of adults, and it's just so funny. And then like it's like, oh well, kids created adults to help them with stuff, and then afterwards when the teacher's saying, oh no, that's just ridiculous, but then he just says he knows. And I just love the art style on this show. And Mr. Warburton also, he was like the character designer on Pepper Ann. He worked on a bunch of other shows too. He actually also was director on, if you recall, the show Sheep in the Big City, because the creator of that show is Mo Willems, and Mo Willems was the head writer on this show for 4 seasons, and then he got too busy because he actually now is a really famous, well-known children's book author. He's known for this character, the Pigeon, and I'm learning all about this now with children's books, so it's funny how things kind of all coincide. But anyway, he's known for, like, there's a whole series about these pigeon books, and a really popular one, I think the first one in the series, is Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. But anyway, they worked on each other's shows. So he was the head writer, and then when he left the show, then Andy Reingold became the head writer. And Mo Willems, though, he actually wrote the screenplay for the TV movie Operation Zero, And it's so great, the TV movie, my goodness. I had seen parts of it, because I remember the zombified stuff, but I didn't remember the whole thing with, it's just so cool how we learned that the person who started Kids Next Door, like number 0, is in fact number 1's dad, Monty Uno. So then number 1 finds out that father and his dad are brothers, making father his uncle, and that means the delightful children are his cousins, which is wild. Goodness. And it's also interesting learning that they are in fact brainwashed. So I didn't know that. I was like, oh wow, so that makes sense that they are just so eerily always speak in unison, that they're so perfect. And they actually were originally in the Kids Next Door as part of Sector Z. And it's just so sad that they don't remember them, because then they turn back into the delightful children. But before they turn back, they just say, tell the kids next door we miss them. Like, oh, I felt for them then. God, the movie was so great, because you got cute number 3 and number 4 moments. I think one of my favorite moments with them is just when Kooky is zombified, though. Well, just first, it's cute. It's like, okay, we'll go. Like, she takes Wally's hand. So cute. And it's cute too, with her long sleeves, with her sweater, so you don't see her hands ever. And the treehouse, and then they run into number 5, who's a zombie now. And Tommy, too, Hoagie's little brother. And he always wanted to be part of the Kids Next Door, but then he basically sacrificed himself for the Kids Next Door. And then he just is the Tommy, like a vigilante for the Kids Next Door. And just mentioning the siblings real quick, also with number 4, he's got a little brother, Joey, because Joey, of course, baby kangaroo. And number 3, her little sister Mushi, who's just like her, so they get along so well. So it's cute. They all have little siblings, except number 5 with the older sister, and number 1 is an only child. But the moment, though, I was thinking of with number 3 and 4 is when, like, number 3, when then she's a zombie, she's like, what should we do, Kooky? She says, kiss me, kiss you. What? No way, no, not gonna, okay. Like, that's so cute. Like, of course he's gonna resist, but then, he's not gonna... Like, okay, the shy little okay, it's so cute. I do also like their moments in Operation Naughty with Santa, and then, like, he gets her a gift. It's like, oh, French fries. She's like, oh, it's the sweetest gift you ever got me. Well, it's the only gift you ever got me. But it's funny. Like, when she says, oh, yeah, I got you a gift, don't you? It's like, you forgot to give me a gift, don't you like me? And then number 5 says, yeah, number 4, don't you like? Number 3. Oh, goodness. I'm jumping all around, I know, but I just, I can't help with number 4 and number 3. They're too adorable together. So, yeah, Operation Zero is just so well done. And then I got a little teary-eyed, too, when number 0 saying, I'm the one who broke the recommissioning machine because my job now is being your dad. And then Nigel gets all teary-eyed, and then he's saying, oh, what is this, old bean? Where are we? Like, what's going on here? He's like, oh, nothing, Dad. I was just hanging out with an old friend. And it's just really cute with the book of the Kids Next Door to write all their stories in. And then he just writes, we are Kids Next Door. It's just so epic, and what a great TV movie. And I didn't mention also number 86, of course 86, the one in charge of decommissioning, who's just super shrill, and she's got her red hair, and she hates boys. I remember Operation Sleepover, where she just has to have a sleepover. Then number 4 sneaks there, like, dressed up as a girl. At one point it's like, oh, do you like number 4? It's at number 3, and then she's just like, doesn't answer. I do also love Operation Maurice. I hadn't seen that one either, where he gets decommissioned, but then it turns out we learn about the actual secret organization of decommissioned kids who actually get to still be part of Kids Next Door to help them. So number 5 finds out about all that, and then again, like, an added layer to the show, and it's just really cool. And the episode where Lizzie and Nigel break up is really well done, too, because it's just sad, though. But then she realizes, like, no, you always put Kids Next Door first. They may need you, but I don't anymore. And then the whole point, though, again, seeing a bigger part of the story, that they're getting him ready to, like, be part of the Galactic Kids Next Door. And another episode I hadn't seen was Operation White House, where it's just, like, testing him, basically. And it was so funny, though, because we see them as adults, and then him saying, like, I'm the president, I have a son named Shirley, like, oh my gosh. And, like, number 5 was, like, in a jail cell, like, my god, and she was, like, it was just weird, a monster thing. And then we see her son, and we see the new Kids Next Door, the kids, and we see them all as adults, like, numbers 2, 3, and 4, and number 4 is the general. He's like, okay, I'm gonna count to 3, 1, oh, what comes after that? And then number 1 saying, oh, okay, we have, like, 10 minutes before he counts to 3, like, poor number 4. There was a funny one too with Operation Homework when he wants number 5 to help him with his homework, and then when we see his like spelling homework and his math homework too, and then one of them, the equation says 10 minus 1 equals me, like equals 4. Like, oh my goodness. Way off base. So hilarious. But Operation White House was great though too. And there was a moment where when number 5 was asking him questions to see if he's really number 1, and then she says, who had a crush on number 3? And don't say number 4. So I guess he did. I guess, but like, that's interesting. But I mean, I don't think that was, I guess that's just a thing they added in, because it didn't really seem like that was part of his character, since he always was with Lizzie. But who knows. Oh, and the hamsters too. I forgot to mention them, how their hamsters are like used for power in their treehouse, and the hamsters are so cute too. Oh my goodness. So much great stuff. Such a really fun, great show. Also, Operation Caramel is great when Heinrich takes each of their most prized qualities, with number 1's leadership, number 2's intelligence, number 3's cheerfulness, number 4's ferocity, and number 5's coolness. So then like they're all opposite versions of themselves again. And then Heinrich becomes Henrietta. That was who she was, Henrietta, all along, which was interesting too. And then we have Operation Treaty, when they were going to, that's when we find out Chad, number 274, in fact, was also part of that secret lair to Kids Next Door, that he never actually was decommissioned, so he was helping them the whole time. So again, stuff that just builds up, that like is really well done when they reveal all this bigger stuff, part of Kids Next Door. So many great things. And then the series finale, Operation Interviews. It's now the extra really very interesting end wrap-up story. I remember it when it aired. At that point, I was a teenager. But I remember watching it, and just, like, it's so great how they brought all the villains back, part of the scavenger hunt. It's really interesting how they have the live action, so, like, actual people playing numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5, giving their interviews. And I remember watching it and being like, oh, do number 3 and number 4 end up together? So then when they first did like that bait and switch to try to trick the audience, saying, oh, my idiot husband, you think like she's looking at number 2, but really she's looking at number 4. Like, it's as if number 2 and 3 got married. And at first I thought, oh, well, I guess that makes sense. I mean, they both were they acted like parents to Bradley, the skunk. I was like, I guess. But then when number 4 says, oh, would you mind hugging your wife instead of mine? And then number 2 says, hey, you're not happy. So we know that number 2 and 5 got married, number 3 and 4 got married. Also, number 4 apparently went to Harvard, went to med school, so I guess, he came around with, he's not as dumb as he seems maybe all along. He finally found his groove, his calling, and like, that's interesting. And also number 4 then, number 3, how she became like the president of Rainbow Monkey, and like, Rainbow Monkey Corporation. And just the ending then of number 1 leaving the Kids Next Door, being the greatest operative on the planet, to then become part of the Galactic Kids Next Door. It made me tear up, like all the goodbyes. It's just so sweet how they each say their goodbyes, and number 1 again saying that number 5 is the real leader, she should rule, since she does become the next person in command for Sector V. And number 4, how he was like so upset, so he like genuinely looked up to number 1. And then when he says Kids Next Door, goodbye, oh, it's so touching. Also when he says the Kids Next Door will never end, so he just knows that that's what he has to do. And there was supposed to be a Galactic Kids Next Door show, spin-off show, but unfortunately it just never came to fruition. But, you never know, one day. Because it's just, that's how it ends then. Then, like, we think that they hadn't had their memories, but it turns out, of course, they just told Father what he wanted to hear, since he was the one giving the interviews. So again, always the Kids Next Door outsmarting them. So, just a really fun, great show. Who wouldn't want to be part of Kids Next Door? Again, I would want to be probably number 120. That's my birthday. Coincidentally, actually, I never brought this up on this podcast, but I was part of a sorority, and I was number 119 in the sorority, so close. Maybe I'd be number 119. I wonder what number Mr. Warburton would be. And then the very last shot of the show made me teary-eyed too. It's just really sweet. Stay young, with just the 5 of them looking out. Numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That just captures the essence of the show. That even if you're an adult, you could still be a kid at heart. So it's just lovely, and just a really great, really fun show to rewatch, even as an adult. and, Kids Next Door, battle stations. And with that is going to conclude this week's episode of Storytelling Saga. As always, you can follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Check out storytellingsaga.com, where you can leave me a message in the contact section or send me an email at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next week, we're tiny, we're toony, we're all a little loony. I will be discussing Tiny Toon Adventures. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.
5, 4, 3, 2.